And I know since you've been here, you've also gotten involved in other projects that have community partners like Rainbow Health Ontario or Planned Parenthood Toronto. Can you talk just a little bit about the experience doing, like having these community partnerships?
Yeah.
And how that, I guess, and maybe what the differences are compared to maybe when you're in more of an academic setting?
Yeah. So I feel kind of similarly into like when I started really jumping into bisexual health and being like, oh my god, I can't never do this ever again. I feel sort of similarly about community-based research, like having the opportunity to have learned how it's done and get involved in projects that use community-based methods. It was just sort of another step in. Now I almost feel like it would be unethical of me to not implement these ways of doing research, at least in some of my work, in the future. I think it comes from a similar like perspective of thinking, oh, having a critical perspective is really important. We need to like critique the field of psychology and continue doing so, and sort of stay away from a more positivist perspective. I think community-based research really facilitates that, right? Because it's not just thinking about, oh, I as a researcher am the expert and therefore I know how to do everything best and will make this fantastic research project. That's just totally not the case at all. And so doing community-based research has been like really eye-opening and thinking about like how much better research is when community is involved, like how much more responsible it is to the communities that it should be serving. And so particularly since I'm interested in these like social disparities and health disparities, like that's so important that the work that's being done in that field is actually what the community wants and is responsible to those communities. And also, like, I don't know, community members are just awesome researchers. Like, when people are really invested and they really care, I think that's just a huge factor in, like, having that lived experience makes you an expert in this area, right? And so, for example, Margaret Robinson and I are doing a project where we just had our first research advisory committee meeting, and the first part of the study is a focus group study, and the community advisory board just like ripped apart the focus group guide that we had brought up as like a potential starting point for the focus groups that we're going to do. And like at first there's always that moment of like, oh no. But it is so much better. It is such a better focus group guide now that it's had like that community input and feedback, and I'm just like way more confident in it as a project and way more excited about it, and way considerably more certain that it's actually going to be addressing the issues that are important to the community. Yeah, so I think like 2 thumbs up for community-based research, and I think I've been particularly lucky in learning about it and getting my like feet wet with this as an approach with Lori, because she does it so well, right? And I think like, you know, I've heard all of these sort of scary stories about it being done really poorly, or about things being sort of lauded as community-based research when they're really, it's not at all. And so it's been great to learn how to do this in a really, from like a really responsible community-based researcher.
And what do you think makes this, or your experience here, like more, like I guess responsible as community-based research compared to other forms of community-based research that might not be as community-based?
I mean, I think like working with Lori, she just has really progressive values around research, and so I think she's really progressive values, and she's also really invested in the communities that she works with, right? And so I think when you have that like level of personal investment, that it really makes you respect the voices and the input from the community members that volunteer to get involved with research. And I think I would assume that it makes you like more open to like critical feedback and things like that. Yeah, I think just like the wide scope of community that has been involved in projects with this team too has been really important. So on the bi-mental health project, for example, making sure that like youth included is like so great. So often we just totally ignore the voices of youth within everything, but like particularly research. And so just like paying attention to like intersections of identity and like whose voices may have an easier time being heard versus those whose might not, and really like advocating for like inclusion of those more marginalized voices and identities. Yeah, so I think all of that contributes to like a better environment to conduct CBR.
Yeah,